parte baja de la pantalla que dice interpretation o interpretación. Gracias. And with that, I'm going to call this meeting to order. I did hear from Dr. Benitez. She may be in a little bit later. She had a slight emergency that she had to take care of. So she'll join us potentially afterwards or somewhere in between. Okay, Mr. Wilcox, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first order of business, public participation. Dr. White and Dr. Joyner.
Okay, Dr. White, I have my timer. I want to instruct the participants that you have 3 minutes to speak. And when you're close to the end, I will say, when we get to the end, I'll say time, and I'll ask you to respectfully complete your sentence.
And Madam Chair, if I may remind that we're not allowed to respond to the public comments.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, our first speaker is Jennifer Graves. Jennifer Graves, you may begin speaking.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Graves. I've been teaching in New Haven for 12 years. I am a preschool special education teacher, and I am the Vice President of Special Services for the New Haven Federation of Teachers. This year, our special education teachers and related service providers have faced possibly their most challenging year ever. We have been functioning in crisis mode with barely maintaining classroom safety and basic human needs at times. With no fault to the department heads and supervisors, as I know there have been endless efforts to retain and recruit staff, we have hemorrhaged special education teachers, paras, and service providers throughout the course of the year, leaving children without the support they are obligated to receive and putting a strain on the remaining staff who have absorbed these students and caseloads. With the growing need of an instructional intervention, special education, and student supports, it will be critical moving forward to include caseload caps and appropriate adult ratios in these classrooms and programs to ensure that our students are properly receiving the assistance and instruction that they need. The increase of students needing special education services has been increasing steadily since before the pandemic, and as I have personally witnessed in our preschool programs dating back to about 2018. Our preschool special education programs are seeing up to double their typical caseloads. Our self-contained K-12 classrooms are overwhelmed and the teachers are burnt out. Our resource teachers have struggled to schedule all of their students on a daily and weekly basis to meet all service hours. Speech pathologists have up to 70 to 90 students on their weekly caseload, and sometimes up to 5 schools across the district. School psychologists and social workers are fighting to make time to meet with students who need them so badly, while finding the time to file their Medicaid documentation. There are not enough adults and not enough hours in the day. Department heads and supervisors have subbed and filled in when and where necessary. Special shout out to my preschool special education supervisor, Kate Anabali, who has come running anytime I've needed her. In fact, I think she's even changed some diapers in my classroom this year. Her support has been immeasurable. Bottom line is we cannot deny students who need special education support. However, our staff needs help because what we persevered through this year is just not sustainable moving forward. So as we close this year, I really hope that there are new plans and ideas being made for September. I am happy to be part of any conversation to assist the special education department moving forward in any way that I can, because our staff and our students are depending on it. I do believe we can collectively make this successful for everyone with the necessary resources and action. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you all have a safe and peaceful summer.
Our next speaker is Sarah Levine.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Levine, and I'm a reading teacher at Barnard School. I was able to attend the reading symposium put on by New Haven last week. I'd like to thank the board members who were able to attend and hope that you are also able to come to the Board of Alders Education Committee meeting on June 22nd. Over half of New Haven students are not proficient readers. This is evident in all of the data. At the reading symposium, Dr. Tracy clearly stated that she would not be distracted by the noise people like me are making, and that we will continue to focus on teaching literacy through a balanced literacy method. One key difference between balanced and structured literacy is in the delivery of the lesson. Balanced literacy uses a constructivist methodology. Give the kids the materials and let them construct their own understanding with some coaching from the teacher. Structured literacy is about direct, explicit, and systematic instruction. The teacher provides instruction to students with many opportunities for students to watch the teacher, work with the teacher, and finally, work independently. Let me ask you, if you were to move to another country tomorrow, to a place where a language which has a different alphabet than English is spoken, would you like to be given books with pictures and told to construct your own knowledge of how the words work? Or would you want a teacher to teach you the letters, sounds, and how to blend them to read words in an explicit and systematic manner? I ask because at my school, we have many students from Afghanistan whose native language is Pashto. Many of them are unable to read because we are expecting them to pick up reading as if it is a natural process, like speaking. Let's be clear, reading is not a natural process for anyone. I implore you to consider not only these Afghani students, but all of our other students who need explicit instruction to learn. Do these students have another year to spend waiting for New Haven to decide what to do to improve our literacy instruction? I don't think so. Please, members of the Board of Education, understand that we can make small changes for next year that will make drastic improvements. One quick one is stopping the use of level text in grades K1, and for some second graders still working to crack the code, and providing these students with decodable books that do not teach them to guess words using pictures. Again, learning to read is not a natural process. With such a diversity of students in New Haven, it only makes sense to teach them using a method that works for all students. The literacy leaders in New Haven have repeatedly stated that they are unwilling to change the method we are currently using, but they have not offered any ideas for what they are going to do to make this method teach more students. Please join me in moving forward with urgency in support of teaching our students to read. Thank you, and as always, I'm happy to talk to anybody that has any further questions.
Madam President, that concludes hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. White and Dr. Joyner. And we'll move on to the action items. The first being the approval of the board meeting minutes. The motion to accept.
Move to accept the minutes.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to approve the minutes. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
and Dr. Benedicto, Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore.
Yes.
And is Ms. Haman in? I don't see.
No, she's not here.
Okay. Mr. Colton is also not here. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. And so the minutes to the board meeting of May 23rd have passed. Personnel report, Dr. Tracy.
Okay, good. I guess it's good evening.
Yes, it is.
It is good evening to everyone. And I hope that everyone is enjoying the evening so far. We have had an interesting week last week. And as you know that we're trying to fill our positions as soon as they come open. and more so making sure that we're filling the administrative positions as they open. So last week we received from Hill Central that the principal was retiring. And we want to say kudos to him for serving New Haven Public Schools. But in that place, we have interviewed Miss Nicole Brown, who has been a longtime educator in New Haven Public Schools and serving as assistant principal of Hill Central School since 2016. Miss Nicole Brown was academic leader at the same school from 2013 to 2016. She has been the district literacy coach at the school from 2011 to 2013. And Nicole receives her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education, Master of Arts in Reading, and 6-year educational certificate in educational leadership. In the interview process, the SPMT deemed it necessary to recommend her and also another person, but we decided to move on with the internal candidate who has spent so many years of her life supporting New Haven Public Schools and the school in general. So I am pleased to report that Miss Nicole Brown is recommended as a principal of Hill Central Music Academy. Along with that, we've had some appointments of teachers, some pending certification appointment of paraprofessionals, and other non-instructional staff on the personnel report. I ask that the board accept and approve the personnel report.
Mr. Wilcox?
I move that we approve the action items on the superintendent's personnel report.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion? Dr. Jordan?
I'd just like to say a few words about Nicole Brown. And I'd also like to say something about Jaime Ramos. Mr. Ramos first. Mr. Ramos is one of the finest human beings I've ever known. He practices the golden rule at every step of his walk. Sad to see him go. For those of you who may not know him, he served in the military. He's a police officer, a great police officer. There are a lot of great police officers, by the way. And he has given his heart and soul to this district. He lives only about a stone's throw from his school. He's a great mentor for the teachers and staff in the school. He's a phenomenal person in the community, and I hope that he doesn't go away too far because he has the right stuff. Nicole Brown is I guess if he's the superhero, she's his superhero in training, and she's really committed to that school. She's put her heart and soul into it. And Dr. Tracy, I want to commend you for grooming and developing people from within our district. They know the terrain, they know the kids, they know the family, and they're thoroughly committed to the school system, in spite of all the challenges we faced over the last couple of years, specifically, and over the last, since I've been on the board generally. So that's a great appointment, if you ask me, but I hate to see Jaime go.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. Okay, any other discussion? None, we'll vote on the personnel report. Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore,
Yes.
Mayor Eliger,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so those items pass. I just have a quick question on just the information only personnel report.
Before you go there, Madam President, may I bring in Nicole Brown to say just a few words?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nicole?
Hi there.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I just want to take a very brief moment to thank Dr. Tracy and the Board of Ed for giving me this opportunity to continue the work that I've been very passionate about at Hill Central School for the past 10 years or so, and in New Haven Public Schools, as Dr. Tracy said, for 24 years. I started at a school that doesn't even exist anymore. It was Dwight School in 1998. So I've been around for a minute, and I'm just thrilled to continue this work that I feel like I really just haven't finished at Hill Central. And I'm just honored to be serving this community, these students, our staff, and our families. So I really appreciate that. I also just want to acknowledge any of the leaders that came before me at Hill Central School that I worked with, starting with Dr. Glenn Worthy, Miss Lillian Fontan, and of course, the great Jaime Ramos, who've each taught me so many valuable lessons that I draw from every single day. So I just really appreciate them. And that also includes the directors we've worked with. I hope I don't forget anyone, but Ema and Keisha and Dr. Benitez and Madeline Negron and now Viviana and Pedro for a short time have all just really contributed to my leadership, and I appreciate them so much. And I just look forward to maintaining the vision of that school and making sure that we have a high-performing school and a joyful school. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam President, you wanted to ask a question about the personal,
Yeah, I
Yes.
see in the resignations for non-instructional, Ms. Ingram Mann resigned from
yes.
HR. Okay, I know that there's been a few people that have left that department. Is anybody left besides Ms. Mack?
Yes.
And I don't mean that to sound, I'm just concerned.
Okay, so we have an exodus not just in the schools, but we have also at central office in some departments. But I must say that we will be able to get over all of this. We have already posted for the position, and we'll be looking for folks who will be willing to work in that position. And we're working on making sure we strengthen the office, and all of us at central office stepping in to be a support to the department at this time. But I also want to say Kanika's moved on to, I would say, better things, the promotion for her, where she's going. And I mean, we can't stop people's promotion. That's a good thing that they're getting promoted in other places too. So on this report, the personal item, we have about 11 teachers retiring. They have reached the sunset of their careers and decided they're retiring. We will see more retirements coming in. And so there were 11 teachers, 1 para, 1 ISS worker, and a cook lead who have retired. Many of these up here, I can't mention all of them, but Miss Harrington Steele, I don't see her on here. She may have been on another, but I just wanted to acknowledge her for 48 years in New Haven.
Yeah.
You don't find people like that anymore.
Yeah.
That's the old school people. We're dying out. That's the old school people who spend so much time giving to a district like New Haven. I see on here Miss Royce Happy, another long timer, and many others on this. You know who is going to be a loss to Betsy Ross School? Sylvia Petrosimo. She has been the arts face at Betsy Ross Arts Magnet School. If you had gotten a chance to go and see their performing and visual arts presentation, it's out of this world. And I think one of their dance performance was featured on the New Haven Independent not too long ago. So we're going to miss all of these people. Miss Lorna Edwards, I can't believe Miss Lorna Edwards is leaving too. These are icons at Betsy Ross Arts Magnet School. So all of the teachers, the special ed teachers, the 6th grade teachers, Miss Thigpen, Reese, Sloan, all of these, we're going to miss all of you. And I hope that you will come back to work with us. Please note that the governor did say that you can come back for 2 years. So now that you retire, come back and serve us 2 more years.
Yes.
So you're going out, and we'll bring you back in to serve us 2 more years based on the recommendation from the governor. So come back to serve New Haven Public Schools. Miss Ruth Ellis, after a long time, is also retired as a paraprofessional. Mr. James Huckabee,
He's my
I
student.
asked a great gentleman, Miss Maxine, to plead. All of these people have served New Haven so well. And with that said, we have some resignations, about 15 resignations across the system right now with these. And we know that it's a hard thing to fill some of these shoes. We're going to be moving, we're going to be working hard to see how we can continue to recruit to fill this position. But I also want to acknowledge one person that as we grow our own, I've moved up to be an administrative intern, and that's Dr. Jonathan Barrowman, to be an administrative intern at one of our schools. I think it's his time to, show what he can do in this leadership world. And so we welcome him at Career High School as an administrative intern. So if you notice what's going on with our personal report, you notice that we're training and growing our own, and we're moving people in different sectors of the population, which is the right way to do. Grow your people, promote your people, grow and promote, so people can have, hope in their career trajectories as they work in New Haven Public Schools. So thank you so much. I won't take up much more of your time. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Dr. Gainer?
if you will. I know I talk a lot, but I think that we shouldn't let time pass when we have people that not only we groomed in the system, but they graduated from the system. And in the case of James Huckabee, he was a student of mine at Hill House. I watched him grow up on Dixwood Avenue, raised by a single parent mom. When I had him in class, I said, Jimmy, you need to maybe go to prep school to work on your writing skills. He went to Hotchkiss. He got a full scholarship at Boston College. He was a New England wrestling champion, and we never had a wrestling team. He just self-taught. He played football at Boston College, and when he graduated with a degree in criminal justice, he actually became a warden. He actually was a warden in one of our prisons. So when he retired from the prison system, he took a job working in our system. His mother raised all of her children by herself with some help from the community. And every single one of them turned out to be great kids. I know the family well, and I'm really gonna miss him because he was one of those kids that could have gone the other way, but he refused to. And he was on the right side of every issue in the community, and a phenomenal human being. I'm just proud to have taught him and his siblings. James Huckabee.
Okay, so thank you. Madam President, I'm going to ask at this time and with the full board, and we do that every year, that we're granted permission to hire our staff members in between board meetings, because this is a crucial time for us. And we want to be able to capture those who have decided to work with us. And just so you know too, that we can hire them, and the next couple of weeks, they're out to another school system. But we want to be able to offer the jobs as quickly as possible to them without waiting on, the next 2 weeks or the next 2 weeks of board meetings. So I'd seek that permission.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, thank you. I have a question related to that. Dr. Tracy, are you saying that this would allow you to, when it would be a more binding decision on the individual? Like that if they knew, I mean, at this time, I can't recall us ever saying no to a teacher hire in New Haven Public Schools in the last 3 years that I've been on the board. But would this be more binding? Like somebody else would say, okay, I've accepted the position and it's finalized, and so therefore I'm not going to accept a better offer that comes my way?
Not necessarily so, but we've done this every year where the board has granted me permission to offer positions to teachers in between board meetings.
I agree.
And this time is very crucial for us now that we're able to offer rather than waiting on the next 2 weeks of board meeting or 3 weeks of board meeting, and then they move on to other places that give them an offer.
I agree. We have done that. As I recall, it's in August, and especially if we're only going to have one meeting in August. But I'm perfectly fine supporting this for a time period. And my understanding is, in the past, what you've done is you would notify us after the fact in the
yes.
But it would have, for me personally, it would have to be limited to a time period of a month or something like that, because I mean, we do meet every other week. We don't have a fifth Monday, and the only time we're not going to meet every other week this summer is in August, where there's currently one scheduled board meeting. And some of my hesitation on this is due to a lot of our HR and hiring related policies being 20 plus years old. So my preference would be that if we were going to continue to do this, that we would work out this issue as to if there were going to be positions that we were going to allow the superintendent to hire. But I am aware of the needs and the shortages. So if there's something that could give us a benefit in hiring and locking in some teachers for the next school year, I'm certainly interested in that. Thank you.
Mr. Golson?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm late. I just caught part of that discussion. What I think I heard was that the superintendent would like to be able to hire folks in between meetings for fear that she may lose them to competition. I think we've dealt with this issue in the past. I think Mr. Wilcox is right. We made it time limited. And I think we even gave the executive committee the authority to act in the stead of the board in those situations where the superintendent needed to move quickly. So I am in support of that as long as it's time limited, and that the executive committee has some sort of acknowledgement or approval of that and reports back to the full board. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Golson. Mr. Wilcox?
Also, to further clarify, in the past, what we've done, it was for teachers, other certified staff members, paraprofessionals. It was not at the level of assistant principal or principal.
Right.
Is that,
You're correct. You're
is
correct.
that the current request?
Yeah, you're correct.
And
Not administrators, no.
so not administrators, which would be defined by those in the administrative union or those on separate contracts like yourself, right? Or
That's
the
correct.
assistant superintendent? Okay.
Yes, you're correct.
Wilcox?
If I could, I'd like to make a motion.
Give me 1 second. Let me just ask my question, Matt.
Okay.
Dr. Tracy, is anyone expected to be out for a period of time that could impact onboarding? Seeing that I think Lisa's
Yes.
the only person in HR.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, Attorney Alexiadis has his hand up.
I think Dr. Tracy was looking at something. To
Oh, I'm
finish
sorry.
to finish her response, I'm guessing.
You wanted more than yes?
Oh, I thought you were looking at something can you elaborate, I guess? Who's?
No, yes, there will be individuals who will be out for different reasons from the district and impacts HR greatly. And also yours truly and others. So we want to expedite as much as possible, as much as we can, as the hires come in, to just move, give them the offer, and we are assured that, you know, they have gotten the positions as offered to them by HR.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Wilcox.
Attorney Alexiadis has his hand that might pertain to this.
Oh, go ahead, Attorney Alexiadis.
I had a question with regard to the proposal. Is the intent to bring these interim hires back to the board of ed, to a full board meeting for ratification or approval of the hiring decision that was made in the interim?
It follows similar pattern as we have done in the past. It's just that I want to expedite that to be not just in August, but, July into August to get these hires in. So we usually put them back on the blue sheet so the full board can see the blue sheet. But we want to make sure that we are able to give them the positions and they know that the position, usually we say pending board approval, but not many people are going to wait. The competition is stiff out there.
Mr. Bolton? Oh, I'm sorry, Elia, was that your last, Mr.?
Well, I think that that in light of the bylaw requirement and the charter requirements that the board approve this type of hiring, I think as long as it comes, I think you can give her that temporary authority, and as long as it comes back to the board
Yes, it does.
for
We've always done it.
approval or ratification after the fact, then I think you're fine.
Thank you, Attorney Alexiadis. Mr. Bolton?
Thank you, Madam President. I think I would disagree with that opinion. I think once you tell somebody they're hired, to suggest that they still have to be hired after you've made that decision, I think is a little tricky. I think that this board has the authority through its bylaws to provide that authority to to a committee of the board to approve, and that it just go on the blue sheets as approved by the executive committee under special order or something. But if I were a candidate for a position here, and I'm listening to this discussion, and somebody's offering me a job, and it may be 2 weeks to a month before that offer is actually an offer, I think that would not help with the recruiting that superintendent wants. So I believe that we have the authority to give to the executive committee. We've done plenty of other stuff. The authority to make approvals in the board stead. We trust them. We elected them as leadership, and we should make life as easy as possible for our staff, especially our short HR staff, to get these people on board and moving along. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Dr. Joyner?
Actually, that's a glitch in our deliberations, because in most systems, the superintendent can hire people below the level of assistant principal without board approval. And we really shoot ourselves in the foot by not granting that authority at some point. But I agree with what Donnell just said. We should cede that authority to the superintendent. And but we should also have those names on the blue sheets at some point, so people will know what we hired, who we hired. But in the past, we have ceded that authority to the executive board to work with the superintendent to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Joyner. Mr. Bolton?
A minor correction to I guess I didn't make my point absolutely clear. I said we would cede that authority to the executive committee, not to the superintendent. I think Mr. Alexiadis made a good point. Our bylaws and charter. I'm not sure about the charter, but I know our bylaws only leaves that authority to the board. I don't think we could have ceded that authority to another entity other than the board, unless we changed our bylaws. But I think we certainly, our bylaws allows us to cede authority to committee. So I think Dr. Joyner and I are agreeing, but there's a little bit of a difference between our agreement. And if Mr. Wilcox is going to make a motion, I would hope that it would be giving that authority to the executive committee, not the superintendent. Thank you.
Mr. Bolton, Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, thank you. For whatever motion comes forward, perhaps it can speak to this point, but Dr. Tracy, I would like to see if you can speak to the quality control measures in place. At first, my thought was that by fulfilling this request, we would kind of eliminate maybe the 2 weeks or so, whatever the time between board meetings, But thinking about the staff in HR, I'm concerned and want to know if you can speak to us not hiring the quality candidates that we want. So not just putting bodies in places because this is the time to do it, but also that the normal processes for bringing in strong candidates with the requirements that are currently in place will still be upheld. My thinking is yes. I want to see if you can verify that.
So Dr. Yarborough, the HR department does not interview candidates. The interview for teachers occur at the school level. So the principals make their recommendations. And then we look at a number of things, salaries, we look at to make sure that they have their background checks, et cetera, all those normal things that are put in place to make sure that we're doing things legally. Those things are carried out, but we at the central office do not interview teachers. That occurs at the school level. So when a principal recommends a candidate, it means that they with their team have already vetted the candidate and this is who they want for their school.
Thank you. Your clarification helps. Thank you.
Thank you. So now is for someone to make the motion. So
Mr. Goldson, you had another question, or was that from the floor?
Yeah, just a quick comment, Madam President. You learn something new every day. I've been on this board for 6.5 years. I had no idea that HR did not interview teacher candidates. That is new to me, and I thank you for that additional information, for that question, Dr. Yarborough, and for that answer, Dr. Tracy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilcox?
So yes, in the interest of time, I'd like to make the motion so that we can approve this. So I'm going to just go ahead and make it, but I'm happy if we need to do a little wordsmithing.
Point of order. Is this item on the agenda for approval, or do we have to amend the agenda first?
I'm making a motion. I move that we add to the agenda discussion and possible approval of giving the superintendent or changing the way we allow for staff hires.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Goldson?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Fiore?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, and so that motion passes.
I'd like to make another motion, and I'll have a comment after if it's seconded. And I move that we allow Dr. Tracy and the executive team to approve hires in between board meetings from now until September 15th, 2022, with the provision that these will be listed on the blue sheets as such at the next full board meeting.
Second.
My question is, when you say executive team, are you meaning Dr. Tracy's executive team at New Haven Public Schools or Board of Ed?
I'm sorry, I should clarify that. By executive team, I meant
Board of Education.
Board of Education, Vice President, and President, Vice President, and Treasurer. So
Secretary.
Secretary.
the Secretary.
I don't mess with money.
Thank you. Okay, good. Thank you. Mr. Goldson, was that also your question? Because I see you had your hand up, but then took it down. You're muted. Oh, okay.
Oh, yes, it was. Thank you.
Okay. Good. Sounds good. Okay.
And just if
Go ahead, Mr. Wilcox.
if I may, just to clarify, is what I envision this process would be is the superintendent notifying us, and if we had if executive team, president, vice president, and secretary would have to get back to her immediately if there were some issues So I don't want to slow this down at all. But I think we acknowledge that we rarely ever discuss somebody in these positions that are non-administrative. We rarely ever discuss them, maybe only once or twice. It's usually just clarifying questions and not disputes over them. We rarely, if ever, separate these folks out. So I'm thinking that we would continue with this expediting on this. So that's my intention, is one of those people that might be in the loop there, or that would be in the loop.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we will vote on allowing Dr. Tracy and Board of Ed exec team to approve hires of teachers. Mr. Wilcox?
Mr. Goldson has his hand up.
Nope. Mr. Goldson?
You're on
You're
mute.
muted, you're muted. Donna.
Muted.
Madam President, could we specify a time frame for this? Is it June 15th through August 30th, or what time frame do we want to do this? Thank you.
Mr. Wilcox?
In the motion, I specified September 15th, 2022, which would get us through the summer into the school year and give time if somebody wanted to propose bylaw changes or policy changes, they could start that process.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Fiore?
Yes.
Mr. Goldson?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And so that motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Madam President.
Mhm.
At this juncture, we want to present the budget for 2022, 2023, and seek for approval of this budget. We've worked hard on this budget. We have tried to come up with some mitigation strategies to make sure we have a balanced budget. As you know, the alders had given us 4.5, 4.6, some change, as part of the mayor's request for $5 million for our budget. And we know we're grateful for it, but at the same time, we know that we still would have a great portion to mitigate. And we sat with our team and we came up with some ideas. And so Ms. Linda Hannans will be presenting to us a balanced budget tonight. Go, Ms. Linda Hannans.
Good evening. Basically, the budget that is before you, a lot of the areas we've discussed previously in F&O meetings. But in front of every budget is a strategic plan, and you can't put a budget together unless you have a plan to say what we're going to do. So in every presentation that I've tried to make, we've always putting the strategic plan before you. This budget that we're presenting tonight is basically the same budget that we started out with back in January, based on the data that we had. We were trying to allocate funds that promote equity between our schools, and to present a budget that reflects the true cost of running the New Haven Public School District. So what I've done is, in this slide, I would like to just keep this slide in front of you in every presentation that I make, because it's an important slide that we need to look at. And it's basically how our schools are funded. So you can see that basically, if you look at it, it's almost half, a little over a half, that is funded by outside sources outside of the city and the ECS funds. We have a lot of state funds that come in, we have a lot of federal funds, and we have quite a few private funds before you. Also, in our next slide, it shows you our key trends. And in 2016-17, I started noticing a trend where we were getting a few dollars less than the next fiscal year. But then due to COVID, our funds have shot up to we're at the point at over $200 million in grants. That's a lot of money coming through the district. And you'll see later that I will explain where that money basically is going. So getting into the budget itself, for our 21-22 budget, we had a figure of $190 million. And our ask was $200 million for this year. And this was keep the lights on budget. Nothing new was added to it. So it was a difference. The Board of Aldermen ended up giving us $195 million for a difference of 4.8. So the increase that we needed to turn the lights on, so to speak, was 4.7. And when it was all said and done, we actually got 2.38%. The budget here was showing where the $9 million was coming from, and this was our proposed 22-23 budget. And as I said earlier, we presented a budget of what we actually needed to operate, and this is all on the general fund side. The next slide here shows our expenditures and where we're spending the money. And as you can see, the bulk of the money is on the large blue side, which is almost 3/4 of the funds. I think it's comes to like maybe 74%. And those funds are basically spent on our personnel. And then the other categories are where we spend the balance of our funds. In the second page, I put the notable cost drivers. And as I said earlier, 74% of the cost in personnel. We have costs for out-of-district tuition and transportation. The bulk of our staff, essentially all of our full-time staff, are in some type of collective bargaining unit. And here I just basically put what the contractor raises were for 22-23. And then we still have a few unions, which are like 3144, which is management. And then we have 884, which have not settled their contracts. So we kind of just estimated what we would think it would cost, us. Also, we had a price escalation in our long-term agreements that have been going through the board, on a biweekly basis, and including our transportation and our building maintenance. Our budget mitigation strategy. So again, we requested 9.3. We actually ended up, board approved increase is 4.8. So we were looking at 4.5 to have to mitigate. Now this mitigation amount, I just want to, put it out there, be clear. This mitigation amount is based on the current fiscal status of the original budget presentation ask. It does not reflect any unforeseen emergencies, continued increases in utilities, which have been hitting us really hard, our aging buildings, and any other acts of nature. So what I've done here is a mitigation plan, and what I did to execute the plan without the need for any layoffs, and I want to clarify that because there were questions at our last meeting, so I just wanted to make sure that we put that out there, that we're really maximizing our grants, and some of the grants we've been allowed to reprogram some of the following costs. So like the attrition and turnover, that is just what it is, folks. Every time we're hiring and then folks are leaving or retiring, so we look at the new hires coming in, and most cases the new hires are coming in at less than the previous person. Our part-time and our summer school, all our entire part-time and our summer school will be picked up from our grants this year. We have the ESSER, we have the Title I, so we have funds to run our robust summer programs. We also were able to pick up a lot of the substitutes with the grants this year, basically because they had said to us, well, if a lot of these things are COVID related or because of the current climate, folks just are not out there. So we've had to fill a lot of jobs with the we can use grant money to reimburse for our substitutes. Executive management, we figured out a way that we could just take, I think there are going to be 2 staff people that are going to be transferred over. And then our lease reduction on the 8th floor, while it, didn't, bring us a lot of money, it was still $102,000. And any dollar at this point when you're working on a budget is a dollar. And then we're going to continue to maximize our grants to the tune of $224.32. On the next, should be another page after that. Okay. Okay, and this page here basically was just, I just kept it in there. This was the budget timeline, and now we're basically at the end of our budget timeline. So I just wanted to, show that everything has been completed. And at the next slide, it would show you that we're up to our June 13th meeting where the board adopts the final budget. And then some of the final thoughts that we all should keep in mind, because if you recall that slide that I showed you earlier, where the 51% of our money is grant funded and 49% of our money comes from our ECS and the city. We need to keep this in front of us as we talk about and work with any budget, because we're heavily reliant on grants to cover our expenditures. And, while we're blessed with a lot of money that came in for COVID, and, the ESSER funds came in, we have to keep in mind that that money is only good to 24 and 25. So we really needed some time to start looking at other sources of dollars, like how are we going to continue to operate a school district, provide robust programs, knowing that a lot of the money comes from outside sources. With the ARP funds, we were able to go back to the state and talk to them about with the initial application. There were things in there that we were able to go back to the state and say, wait a minute, we should be able to do this, we should be able to do that. And with some of my grant experience going back, and I'm still 25, but with my grant experience, I was able to say that, we are allowed to take indirect costs out of federal grants. So we fought for that, and we were able to now, put some money in there to help cover some of our costs. And while we were, and I just want to mention too that about the temporary nature of these grants, and they're not really long-term solutions. We've also continued to manage turnover and new hires, and we'll include other strategies as we go forward. And I think I kind of jumped over a few things that I said, but in the end, I just said we need to find other sources of non-restrictive revenue, along with engaging our stakeholders at the state and local level for adequate funding or changes in the current funding structure, including any of our unfunded mandates. And I think that concludes my presentation for tonight. And if we have any questions, I'll entertain them at that time.
Thank you, Ms. Hannons. Mr. Wilcox, you have a question?
Thank you. I had a comment, and I think it's just a comment. I might come up with a question along the way, but
okay.
I want to thank you for this presentation. Been part of many discussions in finance and operations and so on as this has come together. I'm in support of this because of the mitigation strategies. I just caution that we need to hit these mitigation strategies hard, because we passed a budget that was balanced with mitigation strategies last year, and we're struggling to enact all of the grand plans. So I would hope you all would be overcutting in terms of, or overworking on the continued maximization of grants to kind of get ahead of the game, so that we can be in a fully balanced budget, and know we are to be on track to end the year with a fully balanced budget, and know that earlier in the year, which I think would be helpful. I do appreciate that the mayor and the alders came through with some extra funding. I, of course, would like it to have been more, but I think that the biggest thing that I have noticed was in the legislative session in Hartford this last month was proposal to have the state fully fund their ECS formula. They went through all the effort of creating that formula. I think it was in 2017, and they've never fully funded it. There was a proposal to add that in there. And I think the reporting I saw, it would have brought $19.4 million into the district, which would allow us to do things like provide assistance in those pre-K classrooms and special ed classrooms like we heard about in public comment. It would allow us to increase a lot of these areas that we need to. So we have a lot of folks that want to help us on things like reading and other of the big issues that we deal with in the schools. And I'm thankful for that and love to dig into that. But I'm hoping that we can have with us, with the alders, with community members, to try to get fully fund the formula now in the next budget when it comes up this next year, because there's only so much money in the city to solve these issues. And it's a wealthy state. If you're going to have a formula, fund your formula. So,
Amen.
thank you very much.
Sorry, I was muted. Mr. Bolton, go ahead, and then Mayor Elicker.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm a little confused, particularly around this mitigation plan. I guess there's on page 6, there's 2 slides that look similar. I'm not sure what the difference between them are supposed to be. I want to make sure I understand this slide. The one that we had in our packages had page 6. It had these 2 slides, mitigation plan. And it had attrition, part-time summer substitutes, executive management, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes down and it has the same information. And I'm not quite sure what that's about. Maybe it's a typo or glitch, I don't know. But I have some questions specifically about this slide, if you don't mind. First, these are cuts to these. Are these cuts? For instance, are we talking about cutting part-time in summer school?
No.
By $2 million? Okay,
No.
what does that mean exactly then?
Yeah, no, what's happened is that with the mitigation plan, these were the areas that we were looking for funding. So we picked up funding from various grants. And then that's why the second slide was, and maybe I didn't do a good job of presenting it, but the second slide was then taking the same information and balancing to a zero budget.
All right. So you're saying you took these items out of the general fund and put them on the special fund.
And some of them were in, yes. And
okay, got it.
Okay.
And let me ask you, I noticed that there isn't anything on here regarding the 3 vacant schools that we have. There's no plan, including in the mitigation plan, what can happen with those schools. I mean, can they be rented out? Could that be sources of income to the school system? Can they be sold? I understand there's a whole lot of talk about what they want to do with Strong School. Are those not items of mitigation that we might be able to look at to reduce our budget footprint in this system?
From my understanding, Mr. Golson, although we have these empty buildings, about 5 or 6 of them, I do believe, if they're sold, the monies do not come back into the Board of Ed coffers. That goes into the city's coffers. It does not come back to support a deficit. I hope I stand corrected, but that's my understanding.
Can someone explain that to me? I don't understand if they're school-owned properties. How does a school not benefit directly from the use of or sale of those properties?
Can someone like Ilya from the mayor's side answer that question? When the property of the Board of Ed is sold, where does that money go?
So all the school buildings are owned by the city. That's the short answer. So if you were to surplus any of the buildings and declare that you don't need them anymore, then the custody or management of those buildings would revert back to the city. You would then take the operating costs off your books, such as the residual heating and maintenance that's necessary on any vacant or unused building, and you would eliminate any costs going forward. But if it was a surplus building, then it would be abandoned or returned to the custody of the city.
Could you provide us with the legalese around how that's the case? It just doesn't. It seems a little counter to. It just doesn't seem. I like to know where in state statutes, local charter, how those buildings belong to the city, because as far as I know, for instance, if when we do school building, if we overrun the cost of building that building, that's a board of education expense that has to be paid. It's not the city of New Haven. We're responsible for that. And in the state statutes, we are very specifically responsible for maintaining these buildings and upgrading these buildings. So how do we become responsible for these buildings, but they're owned by someone else? So I would love to see the legal standing on that, if you don't mind, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mayor Oliver?
Thanks, Madam President. Always makes me a little sad that we're not on the same team. Narrative. City does a lot for New Haven Public Schools because New Haven Public Schools are part of the city, and vice versa. So city covers capital costs for the buildings as well. But I just wanted to take a moment on the budget to thank the people that advocated on behalf of the budget in front of the Board of Alders. In addition to some folks here, there were teachers and paraprofessionals and other people that work for or care about the school system because they have a part in it that testified and organized. And I think that's a very important part of the process, because if people don't hear from the community about what they care about, they're less likely to support it. And I think that it's very clear that the alders heard the community, and grateful for that. Also agree 100% with Mr. Wilcox. I think the next kind of big fight at the state is on fully funding ECS. And I hope that we can take a lot of that energy next year for the legislative session, which starts typically in January or earlier in the year. And we can take that energy to the Capitol, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And you're absolutely right that that's where I think there's a real possibility for us to get a significant amount of additional funding. Just one quick question for Ms. Hannons. How confident do you feel about the budget mitigation strategy here?
The bulk of the budget mitigation strategies were based on looking at the grants the way they were, and how we and looking at our current expenditures, and we were able to do it this year. So I'm confident that we'll be able to do it again next year. I just caution, and that's why I put it in writing out there, that the budget that we presented was a bare bones budget. There were no, adjustments to it, nothing else added to it, just what we've had. We're experiencing, again, with the special ed cost rising, and all the things that are going on in our buildings, and with the utility costs, if they keep going up. Right now, we're holding to what we have so far, but the budgets are made to change. And again, we did that budget, the last couple of months, and things may change, which we just don't have any control over.
So the two large items are the part-time in summer school and the substitutes.
Yeah, those I'm not worried about.
Yeah, those items are covered. You're basically saying, instead of covering them from general funds from the city, you're going to cover them from grants.
Yes.
And is there a specific grant or grants that that's coming from?
We have grants that allow us to put tutors and things of that nature on. So we usually would take those grants and use, like say if they want to hire a supplemental cost to the district for, educating our children. So we try to tell people, to try to look at your grants first, try to put in things that don't add to the deficit, so to speak. There are some grants where we have supplanting clauses, so we make sure that we're not supplanting, so we're not doing in any grant anything that the city is supposed to pick up, whether there was a grant or not. So we're very careful not supplanting. However, a lot of folks do have money in the grants where they can, allow for part-time tutors and so forth. So we're making sure that they are aware of their budgets and that they are looking to those budgets to spend funds.
But so these two buckets, it's not one specific grant, but a lot of different grants?
It's spread over grants.
Like we have Title I, we have ESSER, we have
Alliance.
a lot of our Alliance grants. A lot of our grants do have part-time tutors in them, so we go to those grants first.
Okay, thank you.
Without supplanting. We have to make sure we say we're not supplanting.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Madam President, I also like to say that I know my staff, my teachers are asking for comparable pay to other districts around us because we're losing many to other districts. The urban school districts, New Haven, Hartford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Stamford, to some extent, it's hard for us to compete. It is very difficult for us to compete with when a teacher of ours can leave and go to one of these neighboring towns and get 20,000 or more extra. In these times, who wouldn't? So our salaries are not competitive to districts around us, and that's hurting our urban school districts. And I may say that because I speak to other superintendents, it's hurting our urban school districts. So when we were not fully funded, it becomes problematic for us as a school district. I just need to say that. And then we don't want to reach a stage where at the end, we have to be very cautious, very careful that we do not reach a cliff, because as I read of different reports, they're projecting that many school systems are going to reach that cliff. That cliff comes 2024, 2025, end of 2025, somewhere around. It's going to reach a cliff because we're now trying to balance the budget in a certain way, because we can cut staff. It would, in this COVID time pandemic, it would be immoral to cut staff away from our students. And so we want to maintain our staff at the level which we have as much as possible and to support the learning needs of our students. We do believe that working in smaller groups do support the needs of our students. And so I know people will ask, so why don't you cut the staff? I hope no one ever asks that question this time about cutting staff to balance the budget, because we're not able to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mr. Bolton?
Thank you, Madam President. With all due respect to the mayor's comment about us all being on the same team, we are on the same team. The state's on the same team. The Board of Alders are on the same team. The mayor is on this team. We as board members are on this team. But you know what? When we run a deficit, it's our fault. It's not anybody else's fault. And we're legally responsible for that. So if we're on the same team, then the state should be giving us enough money to be able to run our district. Then the Board of Education should be giving us as much money as we ask them to give us. Board of Alders should be giving us the money that we ask for, and we don't get it. So this whole idea that we're all on the same team, sure, we all have the same goals to educate our kids, but those other entities have other interests. The state has other interests besides education in the city of New Haven. The Board of Alders have other interests besides education in the city. And with all due respect to the mayor, he has a dual role. He's a member of this board, but he also runs the entire city, and he has other budgets that he has to fund and other issues that he has to deal with. The other members of this board are specifically here just for the board. So when I suggest that we should be looking at items that we are responsible for, it's not that I'm against the teamwork. It's just that at the end of the day, we're the ones responsible. I mean, we hear that all the time. We run a deficit. It's in the state statutes. We run a deficit. We are personally, each one of these board members are personally responsible for that deficit. And anybody at any time, if it's a wrong leadership, could come to us and try to make us pay up. Okay, so I'm always going to advocate as a board member for the best interest of our kids and our teachers and our staff at this NHPS. So when I say I want to see what authority you have to claim that you own those buildings and we don't, I'm doing that because I want to make sure if we get to sell those buildings, we get the money from those buildings and not the city's general budget and not anything else. So, I'm asking a simple question. I hope I could get a simple response to it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if you're right, you're right. But I at least want to see how you came to that conclusion. Any board member should want to, because we are fiscally responsible for this system. The state statutes say that we are responsible for the buildings in this system, and I want to know how someone else profits from these buildings if they get sold. So, with all due respect, we all are the same team until it's time to pay for that deficit, and then it becomes our problem. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Dr. Joyner?
I'd like to go back to something that Matt said, and I'd like to challenge the board and Dr. Tracy to set a goal to actually do what almost said Reverend Justice Justin Elicker said. I think we need to make a case for asking a very wealthy state to face up to the unique challenges that exist in cities, especially poor cities. And if they have a formula, to be faithful to that formula. And I think we ought to start thinking about it now. And I think we ought to start organizing it. And I think that we ought to show up at the state capitol to help people understand that a city school system has to spend more money on non-instructional services. If you look at the abstracts and agreements that we have, they come under the following categories: special needs, compensatory education, social services, food, building maintenance, and unfunded mandates. They give us something to do and they say you do it, but they don't have the money that goes with it. And I think we need to build a strong legal case for that and show how a large proportion of our budget is dramatically different from the budget in a lot of other communities where they only have maybe 5 buildings in the district, where they don't have as much money on non-instructional services, where they don't spend as much money on compensatory education, and where they don't spend as much money on social services and food. And so we're gonna have to build synergy. You can be on the same team, but you might not pass the ball when it's appropriate or whatever. And I think that what we have to understand is that we're in the same boat. And we do need an answer to the question that was raised about who owns the building, but that's really incidental to the fact that there is a structured inequality that goes on in this country when it comes to urban versus suburban, and even rural schools are victimized by that structured inequality. And so there ought to be a way to hold a body legally responsible for a formula that they devise that they're not actually implementing, so that we can get the money that will allow us to do that. And then we need to help ourselves, because as far as building issues are concerned, I'm sure that we don't spend a whole lot of money taking care of vandalism, but we have to help our community understand to take better care of our schools. And some of the things that I know happens in schools, because I ran a couple, have to stop happening because we spending money on things that we shouldn't have to spend money on. A good example, at the back of Career High School, a group of young people came back there riding on mopeds and they broke out all the back windows. The same group went to Strong School and did the same thing. And so we've got a lot of stuff that we need to do to try to bring some harmony and unity in this city about how we're going to best educate kids and how we're going to hold the powers that be responsible for that. New Haven is a repository for almost every problem in this state. It is a place that is a cultural center, the health center, and what have you. And the citizens of New Haven have to pay that debt. And so we need to organize starting right now so that we can have busloads of people going to the Capitol and helping state officials understand that you have a formula. You created that formula. We expect that you will be faithful to that and give us what we need, because we're just kicking the can and we're leaving a problem for somebody else. And I think that we need to come together around that issue, because it's a moral issue as well. I mean, just look at the abstracts and the agreements that we have and just categorize all of them. Literacy volunteers, that's a compensatory idea. Look at all the food that we have to buy for our children. Look at what we're having to do with homeless kids. And so we need to do that because that's what we are called to do. But we also need to hold people accountable, since they're trying to hold us accountable. And let everybody know that we're all in this together. And we need to start now, start planning together across whatever our differences are, so that we can speak with one voice when we do go to the state capitol. And if necessary, other places, to try to get the funding that we need. Our federal government wants to have a say about schools, but they don't give us a whole lot of money. So, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So let's do something together to make a difference for the kids and for the people who work so hard in this district.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. Dr. Yarborough, and then Mayor Alger.
Yes, thank you. I'm in favor of making a legal and moral case for the state to execute this formula and fund this formula. A couple of points and questions. Something else that Mr. Golson raised that Attorney Alexiadis, maybe you can provide an answer at another time, which is about renting the buildings. I think you answered the sale of the buildings, but renting the buildings, is that a way to bring in income that will go to the Board of Ed to help our budget? And I have a question, Ms. Hannons, I have a question. It's a clarification. I think you said this, but I just wanted to clarify. In terms of the mitigation plan, and you spoke about reprogramming the funds. And I think my understanding is that this is not a permanent reprogramming, but did you mention the date of 2025 or 2027?
I think our ESSER grant is over in 25, because sometimes you can get a 1-year extension. But a lot of these grants are like a lot of these ESSER grants and that we've been getting that brought us up to that $200 million. Those grants will be going away in the next 2 and 3 and 4 years.
Okay.
So that's why I said I want to keep stressing that, we're filling holes with these grants. A lot of things that we're doing, because the general fund, we're so underfunded with the general fund, and we've been that way for so long that we just can't catch up. So every new item that we're putting on every new program that's coming into the district, we've had to write a grant for it, or been lucky enough for someone to give us a grant to cover those expenditures. So, I worry in the next 2 to 3 years, and, being, having graduated and, lived in New Haven my entire life, what is going to happen in New Haven with the way that we're currently funding our district. And it's not like we have to depend upon the city, because the city doesn't have the money either. But how do we continue to educate our students on the formulas that we're using to fund just basic programs? And this being my first year on this side of the budget, it was hard, it was depressing to see when you put a budget together, there was nothing left to do anything with. And I'm like, gee whiz, this stuff is real, and I mean, it was real before, but this is real. You don't learn this in school,
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think in the spirit and practice of thinking about what's ahead and preparing for what's coming soon, in the spirit of being proactive and also being clear, At another day, I would be interested in an actual budget or even an ideal budget that has the general funds, but also represents what we spend outside of the general funds, and having a big picture of what that number is, and not just what we're doing now, but also if we were to fund our priorities and meet the compensation goals, et cetera, that we have, what is that ideal budget and what is the scope of that? Because, if people are going to, if people are going to cut something in half, let them cut in half a big request.
Right.
Let's actually be clear in terms of what it takes fully to run. So even for myself, I'm looking to gain, what is that much larger number that it takes, right now. And then if we were to make the scenario ideal for our children in our city, what that number would be. Thank you. And that's all, President Rivera.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Mayor Elicker and then Mr. Bolton.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm reluctant to get into too much of a back and forth with Mr. Goldson. So I think this is my last comment here, unless he says something that's just too tempting for me to respond to. But I don't agree that we're all on the same team. I agree that in New Haven, we're all on the same team, but the state is not always on the same team as our city. And that's been very clear with the lack of funding that they have done. But, let's be clear, when there's a deficit on the New Haven Public School side, the city pays that bill. They cover that. When the New Haven Public Schools get sued, the city pays that bill. And all of the buildings pretty much all the buildings that we have in the city that are schools have been paid for through capital funds on the city side, renovations and new buildings. So all of that money was paid for on the city side. I don't raise these things because I don't think that distinction is important. I think that we're on the same team. We have the same goal for our children. We're always trying to balance the cost to the taxpayers and ensuring our children have the resources that they need. But I think it's much more productive for us to talk as if we're a team. And I really think that we've shown through this partnership that is the case.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Mr. Bolton, and then.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Tracy, when you start coughing, people start looking at you funny. So you got to be careful about that. I've had bronchitis over the last couple of weeks, and people are like, are actually almost running me over, trying to get away from me. So I don't want to get into a back and forth with Mayor Elicker either. Dr. Joyner and I have been on this crusade for 7 years now, and we've been fighting to have a fair budget. My last inauguration 3 years ago, I took everybody to task for underfunding the system, and I was raked over the coals just by everybody. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired also. I mean, when I was a leader of this board, I decided I didn't care about deficit anymore. We were going to pay, we were going to provide the services, and then somebody was going to pay it. And I was looking forward to the challenge of the state or somebody else coming to us and trying to collect the deficit from me, because they got empty pockets here that they're not going to be able to get anything. They're going to get a whole bunch of lint and dust, and somebody's going to end up having to pay it anyhow. And as Mayor Elicker says, the city always ends up paying it because somebody has to. So I've been saying for several years now, screw the budget. Screw the deficit. Let's do what we got to do to provide for our students and our teachers and our staff, and let the chips fall where they may. And I still have the same attitude. I'm a little calmer with putting it out there now, but I still have the same attitude, and that is we shouldn't be beating ourselves up over deficits that we didn't create. This deficit is created by the lack of state funding. They mandate that we educate kids they mandate under that mandate other mandates, and then they're not willing to help fully pay for it. I think we agree there, Mayor Elicker, that the state certainly is not as much as a team player as we would want them to be. And remember, Mayor Elicker said that first. Anybody from the state listening to this, just echoing his comments. I hope that we do not. I'm glad to see that we're able to take some funding from special funds and cover some of our costs. But that bill's going to come due one day real soon, as Mr. Yarborough, Dr. Yarborough pointed out. We'll be back in the same place in 25, and maybe even a worse place, because our budget keeps growing, and our state funds and our general funds are not growing with our budget. It never has, as one of our slides shown. It's like half of what our growth is. We need to continue to make that point, is that it's the state's responsibility and it's the city's responsibility to fund education. We don't tax people. Board of Education doesn't, we don't raise money. City does, the state does. They have that ability either pay us out of what they're already taxing folks, or raise taxes. That's on them. But they need to provide adequate funding to their school systems, and they haven't, and they still aren't. And I give the Board of Alders all due respect and props for giving us probably the largest increase they've given us in several years, but it's not enough. And we have to keep saying that. Thank you, but it's not enough. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Fiore, and then Mr. Williams.
First, let me just make something clear. As an 18-year-old, I'm very, this is way above my head in terms of, city budget and all of that. So if I ask any questions that may not make sense, I apologize. But we're talking about that the state is not giving us enough, and they never have given us enough. And I was just wondering if there's a way we can appeal their decision, or we can, what's the method of, and again, I don't know who I'm asking specifically. I don't know who would have the answer, but is there a method where we can try to get better outcomes for next year or the year after that? Is there something that we can do? Because also, Dr. Duggar raised a good question of, busing people to, the capital of Connecticut. And, I think students would love to do that if they knew what was going on. I'm always advocating that students need to know what's going on in their district, and for a lot of the things that they have going on, they don't really know why. Like, for example, the protest on SRO funding. A lot of students didn't know that the Board of Education doesn't deal with the SRO funding, it's the Board of Alders, right? And it seems like that protest was less than efficient because of that point. And so I just want to advocate that the students need to know that why the schools are run down and why they can't get as much as they should be. As a high school student, I would love to know why the bathroom is completely destroyed all the time, besides the fact that the students are destroying them themselves. Why aren't we getting the funding that we deserve and need? And I think that if we told the students why bluntly, it's because of the state level. And again, I don't exactly know why, I don't know all the details. But if we can know those details on like a student level, I think students would be happy to, go on buses to Hartford and, make our case. That was a lot of, questions and everything, but is there anything that we could do to cap it off? Is there anything that we can do specifically for this year or next year? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fiore. The only way I know is writing letters to the state and then going to the LOB and kind of lobbying for it. But if anyone else has better information, chime in.
So what we have normally done, Anthony, and thanks for putting it out there that the students would love to support, because student voices are important. What we have been doing is working with our local legislators, working through them. We also have a lobbyist. I need you to know that superintendents across major urban areas and suburban areas, we were at the State Department not too long ago, lobbying and speaking up for, the full funding of the ECS formula. And it was a bill called, I think it was HB 8 something, I don't remember the name, but eventually didn't go far after students also came out from other school systems to speak up about this. So it all depends on what they will do. But I think a lot of pressure with a lot of voices can make a difference. And you're right that we need to educate our students on some of these things. So the next legislative session, I think, begins in January of next year. And then we get to see what bills they have on the floor, because I think you can only speak to the bills that they have, correct? With Darnell, who always knows about these things. We have to speak to the bills that they put out. And then if we see where there are bills that are going to impact public education, then we go and speak about those.
Right, that's the part about going to the LOB
Thank you.
that I was mentioning earlier. Yep.
Yeah. And I really, I said it, but I'll say it again. I really do think that it's important for students to know what's going on. There's so many issues in New Haven, and it's not just a budget thing. And I feel like students want to know more about why things are happening. And I don't know, the next time, the bill is on the floor or anything, and I don't know how appropriate it is to take class time to talk about why the New Haven schools are going to be in danger in 4 years. I don't know how appropriate that is. I don't know. I'm not going to be here during that time, but if I could give any advice, is if a occasion arises where students can be there in numbers and they only need to be told what's going on, I think it would be great for the students to know. Thank you.
I agree, Mr. Ferry. Thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
Thank you. I'll just as a side comment, to address something Mr. Fiore said is I was privileged enough to be in the room for the last student government meeting, citywide student government meeting, and I think your answers was in that room in terms of motivated kids that have stepped up into leadership positions in their schools all around the city, and I think that that's a great place to start. So if you're going to pass on some of your wisdom to some of your student colleagues, that might be the place, and I'm sure we could figure out ways to work better with that group. But that's a side comment. My main point for raising my hand was I'd like to make a motion, and I move that we approve the 2022-2023 budget.
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, any further discussion?
Had it already.
Yeah. Okay, seeing none, Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mr. Golson,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, board. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, do you know who will do number four?
Subcaptain of for grants manager MOU,
Yes.
is that a governance? No.
No, we were asked to put it on the agenda for this evening. I'll tell the board what that is. I'm looking to see if we're in the packet or something
Hold
like
on,
that.
Mr. Wilcox has raised his hand. Maybe
Okay,
it's
Mr.
an
Wilcox? Okay,
Yeah,
Mr. Wilcox.
yeah, I asked for this to be on the agenda because it's my understanding that any memorandums of understanding with our labor unions have to have board approval. So this is one that will allow, as we heard a few weeks ago, Pat DeMayo, it was retiring, and this is a memorandum of understanding. My understanding is with the union to allow her to work on a part-time basis for, I believe, till the end of this calendar year. This is something that I am extremely in support of. As you can see on our agenda night with, I think, 101 action items from finance and operations, the thought of Ms. DeMayo moving on completely without having a continued role in some of these things. I'm really glad something's in place that'll help this out. So that's why it was on the agenda. I think it has to be approved by the board since it's an MOU with the union.
Matt, I thought it was for 6 months, correct? Not just to the end of this calendar year.
I thought she was retiring effective June 30. So 6 months would take her to the end of the calendar year.
Oh, okay, you're correct. I mean, June 30th is the end of the year anyhow. Let's go.
Has her position been posted? Is she leaving?
Lisa, no, we're looking at the job description to see if there needs to be changes to it. Because Pat was doing this work with the board that was not even part of her job description, but she was doing that work anyhow. So it we set precedent, so it becomes a part of what she was doing.
Okay.
And so we don't want to have any union grievance to say we're hiring a part-time worker to take over union positions. So we really need that help until we replace positions with a different job description.
Okay, Mr. Wilcox?
I'd like to make a motion, and that is I move we approve this memorandum of understanding.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Bolton?
Thank you, Madam President. I loved Pat. I think she did a terrific job.
Yes, she did.
When I was chair of that committee, when I was president of the board, I could always count on her getting good information to us on time, and she was a consummate professional. I just have a question about how this would work. She's retiring and will collect her pension, but she would also work part-time 19.5 hours at this $39, $40 rate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, and this and the number of hours she's working and the amount of pay that she's getting will not interfere or reduce her pension in any way?
That is correct. That is why it's limited, it's maximum of 19 and a half hours per week.
Okay. And she decided instead of retiring 6 months from now, and just staying on payroll, that we couldn't convince her to stay on an extra 6 months instead of paying this. I mean, because we pay her pension, and now we're also paying her extra $40 an hour for 20 hours a week. There was no way to convince her to stay on for maybe a little extra money that would have cost us a little less. I mean, you know what? Forget it. Don't even answer that. Don't even answer that question. I just hope that I know that we do this a lot now with principals and administrators who retire and then come back to fill in for a while when there's a need. So I certainly don't see a problem with seeing certainly somebody with like Mr. Mayo doing it, but this is going to open us up to accusations of favoritism. That we do it for certain people, we don't do it for others. I hope we find ways. I mean, I'm sure she gave us enough notice that she was retiring that we should have started putting in place some kind of training and hiring process for the next person. Is this person that she's going to be working with, Selena Manning, is she taking on the job, or this job hasn't been posted yet?
The particular section of working with the board was, remember, you recall Sonia Flanagan, who was
right. I do remember
that was the work Sonia Flanagan used to do for that particular piece of it.
Okay.
And then when Sonia left and things were changing, Pat decided to support us in working with the board on that. So that's the particular piece. It's not the complete.
All right. So we haven't. Did we post for this position yet? No, we haven't. because you're still looking to rewrite it. Okay, I understand. Just Selena Manning then is not taking on the position at this point. Is that correct? I mean, because you said you're training, she's working with her.
We'll be having Pat training Selena to do this work with the board for the F&O piece of the work.
For the
That's
board.
what
Okay,
we'll have
got
to
it.
train Selena
Understood.
to do.
Understood. Understood. But she did other stuff besides her work with the board. Who's going to take on the other responsibilities she had?
So I know she currently works with the school volunteer group, placing volunteers in school. She, and if you see the memorandum, that she is.
This is Pat or Selena?
Pat.
Okay. All right.
Pat.
So you're confident that you're going to be able to cover all of her duties while she's retired, even though she's coming in only 19 hours a week.
We believe we'll be able to do that.
Okay. Thank you very much,
We'll find about
Madam Chair.
And Mr. Wilson, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on the grants manager MOU. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Golson,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mayor Pellicer,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so that motion carries. And who is speaking on the schedule of governance, the proposed schedule? Is that Ms. Jackson?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, President Rivera?
The approval of the revised proposed schedule for governance? Are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So pretty much in a nutshell, I apologize, I'm at my child's baseball game. But pretty much what we are doing is we're revising the schedules for the remainder of the this year to go from 2 meetings to 1 meeting a month.
Okay. And so we need a motion.
Madam Chair.
Dr. Joyner?
I move to move the schedule of the governance committee to 1 meeting per month.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion? Mr. Wilson?
Just a quick question. We're not replacing any dates, right? We're just eliminating dates. Is that correct?
There actually, yes, no, actually there are, thank you for that question, Mr. Goldson, because there are a couple of dates that have been changed. So there are a couple of dates that are on there. It is the couple of dates that are after the holidays. So you will see the date that's after July 5th has been changed. The date after the date that was supposed to be for July 5th has been changed to the 17th, and then the date after Labor Day has been changed. Those 2 dates have been changed from the previous calendar.
All right, I just want to make sure, because I remember that there was some freedom of information law about dates being announced 30 days in advance in order for them to be regular meetings. So any of these new dates that are added are we're approving 30 days in advance now? Is that what, because they have to be?
Yep, that would be correct.
Okay.
Yep, that would be correct, because the first change date is not until July 18th.
Okay, all right. So that has to be posted on the website like almost immediately once we approve.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for that, Mr. Goldson. I forgot to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson and Mr. Goldson. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on the. We will vote on the proposed schedule for governance. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That motion carries.
Chair, I'm a yes as well.
I'm sorry, Mayor Elicker.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, finance and operations, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you very much. Before I address the finance and operations items, I did happen to see my email, and I've already have a question from one of our crack reporters in New Haven about the specificity of the budget motion that we passed. And so this is, I guess, a point of information or a question. My intention behind the motion was that we passed the budget, which included the administration's mitigation plans, which would indeed give us the $195,263,784, which was approved by the Board of Alders. If you all don't think that's clear, maybe we should reconsider that to add that in to make it specific that that is the amount. So that's a question I have for the group.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. It was clear to me. Yeah, Mr. Goldson, did you have a comment on that? Or were you?
Oh, absolutely.
Wait.
I was voting for the 200 million. I remember I told you I don't care about deficits, so I'm just joking. No, I think I understood where you were going, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Anyone else? Okay. All right, go ahead, Mr. Wilcox.
So I think it was in the motion that we were approving the budget, which here includes the mitigation, which the amount brings it to the 195,263,784. So just to clarify for everybody listening, thank you for the question, especially now, so that we could have dealt with it if we needed to. Okay, as you can see, Finance and Operations Committee was quite busy last Monday going through, and we also had a special meeting to address 3 short items also before this meeting. So in front of you, we have, I believe by my count, 101 different various proposals or abstracts, agreements, contracts, and amendments. We're going to have to move these, a couple of these items separately, one of which is because of me, and one of which I had the request from Dr. Yarbrough. If anybody else would like items moved separately in order for discussion or in order to recuse yourself, please let me know. But I'm going to start off by making a motion that we approve Agreement 3 and Agreement 14 as listed on the agenda.
I recuse myself from that.
Okay.
For a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough.
Recuse.
Thank you. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So agreements 3 and 14 of the F&O items pass.
And I have asked, since, as everyone know, I have recused myself on anything related to Clifford Beers because my wife works on a federally funded grant project there. So, Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes. I move to approve Abstract 5, School Readiness Grant, Abstract 6, Quality Enrichment Program, Abstract 7, School-Based Health Centers, Agreement 12 with Clifford Beers Guidance Clinic, and Agreement 27 with Clifford Beers Guidance Clinic.
Second.
I'll get you next time.
Okay.
Awesome. I want to be able to say second one time, you know what I mean?
Thank you, Dr. Joyner, Mr. Fiore. Any discussion? Okay, and so we will now vote on abstracts 5, 6, and 7. And what were the agreements?
President, just for as a point of order, who I didn't catch who made that motion and who seconded it?
Dr. Yarborough seconded, Dr. Joyner and Mr. Fiore. I'm sorry, Dr. Yarborough made the motion, Dr. Joyner and Mr. Fiore seconded.
Dr. Joyner could have this one. I'll get the next one.
You can have 2 seconds.
You can't,
I
yeah.
just wanted to make sure that we had that legally we're in a good place. That's all. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so it's abstracts 5, 6, 7, and agreements
12, 27.
12 and 27. Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Golson,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Recused.
and Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so those items pass. Okay.
And I'm going to make another motion here, and that is that I move that we approve the remaining action items, which by my count is the remaining 8 abstracts, 30 agreements, 43 contracts, 5 change orders, 4 amendments, and 4 purchase orders.
Second.
And a partridge in a pear tree. Who was the second?
I'll second that one.
Okay, I think that we.
I can't do though.
I'm gonna second it with you, Anthony, just in
Yeah.
case.
Second it together, yes.
Yeah. We're partners anyway.
Yeah.
Thank
It's only taking me
you.
2 years.
Thank you.
Can I ask how old Mr.
I'm 18.
We should talk to the city about eventually changing the charter. I mean, he's old enough to vote now. Legally in a city election, he should be old enough to be able to vote on our board also. So we should consider that asking the charter to see if there's a charter change to acknowledge that sometime in the future when they do.
He would have to be elected
revision.
by eligible voters. He would have to be elected by eligible.
No, he wouldn't. I mean,
Yes,
every
he-
other.
Yes, he would. Yes, he would. Or he'd have to be
Okay.
appointed by the mayor.
Point of
But
order.
that's a point of order. We don't.
Point
need
of
to-
point of order. is not on-
Amen. I agree. A point of order.
Thank you.
I
right.
take your point well taken.
Thank you. All right, see, no further discussion. We'll vote on the remaining F&O items. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And so those items are passed. Students report, Mr. Fiore.
Ooh. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is my last one, I believe.
No, there's one more in June.
I have one more? Oh,
Mhm.
great. Awesome. Okay, great. I'll hold off any speeches and things like that.
Okay.
Not much to report other
Isn't
than
it- So point of order, isn't his,
not much to report. Sorry.
isn't his replacement being sworn in at the end of the month?
They start in
Sorry,
July.
Oh, okay,
So
thank you.
Yep.
Sorry. Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? I'm lagging out a little bit on my side. Great.
Yes.
Nothing much other than a big send off for all the seniors who are graduating this week, myself included. Yay!
Congratulations.
Thank you. This year's seniors are really ready to, tackle the world. We've been through a lot, COVID, as everyone. But I think it's only made us stronger, and we are ready to face new challenges. And for me, myself, and I, at least, I intend to return back to New Haven and take what I've learned and put it towards my community. And I just want to say good luck to all the seniors who are graduating this week, and to all the other high schoolers who are not graduating, celebrating their summer vacation in the weeks to come. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fury. discussion. We'll move on to teaching and learning. Dr.
Sorry,
Berner?
I
Oh,
forgot to say.
go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to say. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Wilcox and the others who have joined for the last meeting. Specifically, thank you to Mr. Wilcox for sharing his own personal experiences in New Haven and really connecting to the students. I know the students really respected you for that, and they really appreciated that. And I know they would want to see more of that in the coming years. So thank you again. And just being a role model for them in that meeting, they really appreciated it, and so did I. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Joyner.
Okay, if I'm correct, we approved the field trips
Mhm.
and they're in your packet. So I just like to give a shout out to all the teachers who take their time to go away with students and be on duty 24/7. I've done that, and managing students in hotels and all the other stuff that goes with that is a challenge. We actually took 3 busloads of kids down south to our colleges, and that was a real challenge. But I'd like to thank our teachers for that. And I can't say enough for our teachers. We have phenomenal people, and we're going to do everything we can as a board over the next few years to try to do as much as we can to enhance your work. I'm disappointed because I sent a document to be included in the packet, and I have it in front of me. It's called the Teaching and Learning Grade Levels Task Force on Student Development. COVID was really an unprecedented event in American education history because of the impact that it had on all of our institutions, families, schools, churches, government, what have you. And it exacerbated problems that we have had before COVID. We have been an underfunded district since I came here 50 some years ago. And that's the structured inequality that I talked about. And I think that Matt, in his brilliant wisdom, articulated it so well when he said that one of the prime movers of it is the fact that we created a formula that we don't adhere to. And I also think that the mayor and Darnell had good points. As you guys know, I'm a big Justin Elicker fan, and but I think we can also come together more as a team and recognize that we're in the same boat, that the city itself is being victimized when the government does not respond to its needs, particularly when you consider the impact that New Haven has on the state. I was lucky enough to hear Mario Cuomo speak in New York once. And when New York State was having problems, he sent President Bush a letter asking him for help. And President Bush said, "Yeah, but you're the captain of that ship." He said, "Yeah, but you're the admiral of the fleet." And in this case, the governor of the state, who I personally like, and I think he's done a good job, is the admiral of the fleet. But we're going to have to, if we're going to develop our students, we're going to have to insist that we get the resources we need to develop them. Our school district is 80% free or reduced lunch. We are a poor school district. We are a poor community, and our kids have more needs than kids in a lot of other communities. And they're also born from 0 to 3 years old. They suffer from inadequate family environments in some cases. I'm not knocking the families, but just the resources that families lack. So what I'd like to do, and I've talked to Dr. Tracy about it, and it should have been in your packets, is to create a task force by the end of this month that would have 3 substructures in it: pre-K through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12, to make recommendations on matters of teaching, learning, and holistic student development across all content areas. And we need representation from all of the critical people in the community. I'm going to personally ask Dr. Yarborough and Dr. Benitez to play a major role in that because of their experiences, but all board members. And then, of course, the piece that I added as a result of having a conversation tonight is I'm going to be asking Darnell and Matt to play a major role, and along with the mayor and the superintendent. And so, because I believe so much in Socratic inquiry, I have a couple questions this is a draft. The first question that I'd like the task force to face is how has the pandemic influenced school life relative to student behavior, instruction, and our overall learning climate? And I've seen a real big change in student behavior. Many students don't behave the way that I think they should before this, but it certainly has been a problem, not only their behavior in school, but their behavior out of school. If we look at juvenile homicide rates across the country, it's at an all-time high. And if we look at the challenges that teachers are facing in terms of trying to provide instruction, it's a real challenge. And so all of that affects our learning climate. The second question was regarding our systemic responses to the pandemic. What is going well regarding our mission to improve the education and development of our students and staff? What is not going well? And what can we do going forward to ensure academic and holistic improvement for the coming school year? I think we have to take what we've learned this year and try to make the kinds of changes that are necessary for next year. And Gemma and a couple of principals and Viviana already began to look at that from their standpoint. I also believe that a great system has to have a really classic problem-solving protocol. And so the question, because a lot of things come to the board that really should be dealt with in the building. And so one of the questions I ask is, what are our current problem-solving protocols at multiple levels? At the classroom level, the building level, the district level, the district office level, and at the board. Are they adequate? Are they known to key stakeholders? And how can they be improved? Because there's been so much conversation about whether our kids can read or not, and I'm not responding to any particular public comment, but this is a question that's asked all over the place. How do we help the community understand the variables related to high levels of student achievement and personal growth? That's not just a school's responsibility. And how do we tap into that? Because we have thousands of kids in this school that are kicking butt and taking names in the classroom. Not all of them are well off. There's a reason for that. And we ought to be looking at that and hold everybody accountable for their role in making it happen. Another question is, what behaviors are required from students, parents, teachers, administrators, support staff, central office staff, board members, the community at large, for our ability to create a safety net for students that would facilitate whole child development? Again, every place I've ever worked with and succeeded, everybody did something, no matter what it was, because we all have to contribute. And then this is a dicey question because a lot of people don't like to hear school people ask this question. But since people ask us what we do, we can ask the people who raising these children what they do. How does effective parenting and teaching converge to enhance learning and development? What are the optimal standards and behaviors for effective parenting? We always talk about teaching standards. What about parenting standards? Effective teaching standards. What responsibility do the students themselves have for their own growth and development? Another big question, how must we deal with the misinformation that undercuts our ability to facilitate optimal teaching and learning conditions? This country and this world is filled with misinformation. All you have to do is look at the January 6th committee, and that's a writ large example of all the information that goes about. Take the matter of reading. You know, when we talk about decoding, we only talk about the first stage of reading. I can teach as low as 4th grade. Reading takes on another challenge once we get into content areas, and we're not focusing on the decoding, but we're focusing on comprehension and evaluation of written text. And I don't know any teachers in this district in the early grades that don't teach phonics, by the way. At least when I had a school, they taught phonics, and I don't know there's any prohibition against teaching that. What teachers do, they teach the kids in front of them, and we need to teach this community about differentiation. There's no such thing as one size fits all. Every child has a different need based on what that child brings to the schoolhouse. And our system has a greater need for differentiation than many systems, because a lot of our children don't get the kind of preschool preparation that they need in order to soar in school. And it's not exclusively a problem of poverty, because I know a whole lot of poor kids that come to school with the social skills and the prerequisite academic skills to learn to read well and what have And then, of course, this was inspired by the conversation between the mayor, Darnell, and Matt, that the task force should deal with. What steps must we take going forward to ensure faithful adherence to the state funding formula for our schools in the next fiscal year? A deal is a deal. If you create a formula, then you should follow the formula. And if you change the formula, you should tell us why. Because we can no longer rob Peter to pay Paul, because Peter is broke. Peter is broke. And so we have to make those kinds of demands. And then, of course, there's some other questions, but I don't want to take too long because it should have been in your packet. I'll send it to you. I think I sent it out initially to a few people anyway, but I'll send it to you. But we've got to focus on those things, planning processes. I believe we have good union leadership in this district. I have a lot of confidence in the president of the teachers union, administrators union, the clerical union, and the paraprofessional union. We all have to come together and create this larger union of adult stakeholders that are hell-bent on educating our kids and making a just and righteous demand from the state government and the federal government so that we can get the education that's necessary for these kids. Because COVID is tearing us apart, and there are other issues in the country that's tearing us apart, and all of that affects schools. How many safe spaces are left for children? You can't go to school, you can't go to the movie, you can't go to the grocery store, you can't go to the park. And that impacts children. We have a national problem with trauma that we have to deal with. And we have some people on this board and some people in our district that know how to deal with it within reason. And I think that we need to put together a structure and a process for looking at where we are, looking at the factors that drive us forward, looking at the factors that restrain us, and then looking to people above our level to provide the resources so that we can do a better job, and asking more of our families and our children. There's no excuse for kids tearing up a bathroom. There's no excuse for it. There's no excuse for going behind a school and breaking out all the daggone windows. That money could be spent on something else. And we cannot allow a small number of people, whether they're adults or children, to sink the ship. You cannot let that happen. And if you do that, then shame on us. We should be caring, we should be just, we should be fair. But justice is also tempered with accountability. And I don't care how old you are, you know the difference between right and wrong. You know it's wrong to cuss a teacher out, to SMD, to tell a teacher to SMD. Y'all know what that means. We got teachers every day that walk in front of classrooms and people get mad at them, SMD, FU. That is wrong. And we need to stop it and demand better behavior from all of us, including me. I'll send you the thing, but I'm old and I'm mad.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Quick question, Dr. Joyner. At our last meeting, I think this happened too, where we didn't have the documents. Did you email them to me and I neglected to forward them on to Ray, or what?
In the interest of I'll take full blame for that. I emailed them to somebody, but I don't like throwing people under the bus.
Okay. That's
so
fine.
Put it on me.
Making sure it wasn't something I
No, I didn't. It's not something that I sent to you. I've been talking about it for 3 meetings, but I actually created the document and I sent it to people. But nobody would do it on purpose. So we're good. We can straighten it out.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Golson.
Thank you, Madam President. I was going to say that Dr. Joyner sounded a little grouchy and old, but he knows.
I am grouchy and old.
He knows what SMD means, and I don't. So he ain't that old.
Darnell, you and I go way back. You know darn well that you never heard a kid in the hallway at Hill House tell a teacher to S my.
Okay. Okay, a little too much information. For,
let's keep it real. What did the kids say? Keep it 100. Let's keep it 100.
I, Dr. Joyner, first, I would say to you, yes. I mentioned before that I had been hearing. I mentioned at a previous meeting that I had been hearing that some of these kids were out of control, especially the middle school kids, the seventh, eighth graders. I've been hearing this for a couple of years now. You say that they know better. I would counter that some of them probably don't. I think that's home training. I hate to say it, but we learned at home. There's certain things you say that you don't say and you don't do, and you respect teachers like you respect your parents, like you respect your neighbors, and that doesn't seem to happen these days. And I'm not sure if these kids really, I mean, what they mirror what they see at home, obviously. So many of them do, not all of them do, but many of them do. So there has to be something there. I agree with you. I'm assuming that with this idea of a task force, you're looking to add people other than board members to this task, so outside experts and parents and teachers and so on. Your task force sounded like 5 or 6 different task forces, tell you the truth, because you were dealing with a lot of different issues. I don't have the paper in front of me, so I don't know, can't remember exactly what you were saying, but I absolutely second your thinking that it's time to bring in some community folks and some experts to help us kind of study what's going on and develop hopefully solutions to resolve those issues. So I'm 100% behind what you're suggesting, and certainly look forward to seeing your paperwork and seeing the president moving this item, this activity forward at this board level. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Golson. Dr. Yarburn?
Yes, Dr. Joyner, I look forward to participating in the task force, and mostly I look forward to the outcomes. And I do hope we move expeditiously to do the work we can do in order to get the outcomes that are needed. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Dr. Yarburn. Okay. Superintendent's report, Dr. Tracy.
Okay, thank you again, Madam Principal, Madam President. Great discussion going on. I'm going to be very quick. I just want to share that I have been privileged to attend and speak a little bit at the graduation for Gateway Community College. And Dr. Yarborough was there. We have 24 graduates from that program who have received their high school diplomas. Dr. Sherban is here. Dr. Sherban, are these graduates added in our graduation rate?
Yes, they are included. It is a program of the New Haven Public Schools, so the students are duly enrolled.
Okay.
So yes, they do count for our graduates.
Yeah, thank you. Someone asked a question, so I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth. Several graduations are going on in our city this week and next week. Tomorrow is packed, the next day is packed, and all the way up to the closing of school. We have both high school and 8th grade graduation. We have field trips, field days, celebrations galore. Kids are just having fun. Along with that, we have 42 COVID cases this week, which is showing a decrease from the previous weeks. So we're looking at 42 this week. That's a good sign, I think. We also have I had promised I would share this from Pedro Mendia. This is the NHBS Power of Bilingualism contest winners of 2022. 3rd place, Paulina Kadinsky at John C. Daniels, grade 3, and Mr. Lopez Leon. Honorable mention, Eva Kadinsky, Bella Saez, Clinton Avenue, Bianca Gonzalez and Martinez, grade 4, and Jason Huang, Benjamin Jefferson, grade 5. Grade 6 through 8, 2nd place, Alexander Velasco, Kozatiel, if I pronounce that right, Daniels School. Honorable mention, Lester Beto, Daniels, grade 7, Luz DeLeon Hill Central, grade 8, grades 9 through 12. Grand prize winner, Mayuri Hernandez, Sound, grade 11. Honorable mention, Nicole Arias Paulina, Wilbur Cross, grade 12 student. Brian Jimenez, Wilbur Cross, grade 12, and Diego Roman Velasquez, grade 12. These are from the NHPS Power of Bilingualism contest winners for 2022. And if Miss Jessica Haxey is on here, she wants to share very quickly some other winners of, Jessica, are you here?
I'm promoting her to panelist now.
Jessica, very quickly, I think we need to honor our students. There are a lot of honors, but there's so many that we can just probably mention a few. Jessica?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Tracy. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Just so that I don't take too much time reading the names, if you don't mind, I'll just share my screen for 1 second and I'll show you their names. So this is our sort of celebration of excellence for world languages this year. I just had to mention again that we're very excited that Trudy Anderson is Teacher of the Year for the Northeast. She won Connecticut, she won Northeast, and it's possible that in November she might win National Teacher of the Year for ACTFL, and that would be a very big deal. That's a White House visit level big deal. So these are our poetry contest winners. It was virtual this year, and we had winners in many languages. These are our Arabic winners from all different schools. We had German winners. You'll see some of the same names repeated. These are students that study different and often less common languages in after-school classes at Yale on their own time. And they've pursued those languages in the poetry contest as well. We've had Russian winners. And we had a number of Spanish winners again of all middle school through high school. So we're very proud of all of them. We also participated in something new called the Connecticut Colt Excellence Awards. And the students were nominated by teachers and then chosen for their high grades, enthusiasm, and most importantly, commitment to the language they're studying and positive attitude toward languages and cultures. And there were students from Sound, Wilbur Cross, Arabic, Sound, Italian, and Spanish. You can see their names there. There were students from ESUMS and Nathan Hale, and ESUMS both in French and in Arabic. And then we had beautiful induction ceremonies for the honor societies. My favorite one is at King Robinson, where they do a junior honor society and all the kids say the pledge in French and English and then sing. So Ms. Berthelot and Mr. Royal's kids are listed there, the new inductees. And then we also had French inductees at career at the high school level. We had 40 students be inducted into the Spanish Honor Society. And that's wonderful because it was defunct for a couple of years when someone retired and we had trouble getting it going again. So Ms. Castellanos really worked hard to get all those students there. And there were many parents there to celebrate that. And also we had many students be inducted at career into Spanish as well. And Sound School also inducted a number of students into Spanish Honor Society with Ms. Blank. And finally, I can't help but say it, we had 124 students receive the Seal of Biliteracy in languages, and our first in-person celebration was really enjoyable. So thank you for the opportunity to highlight these people, Dr. Tracy.
Thank you, Jessica. We appreciate that the board is seeing a cross-section of things we're doing in New Haven Public Schools. We're so proud of all of our students and their efforts. Jessica, if you send that slide, we'll send it to the board so they can look at it also. And next time, Mr. Matthews will share some things about what is happening in mathematics in terms of students who have achieved excellence. So we'll have that. Last but not least, in my little piece here, we have great things and we also have some not so great news. So we share it all. We have 1,137 students with one or more suspensions this year, up from the last time when we shared with you. We have 43 expulsions with 2 pending expulsions for this year. So, we may end up seeing a total of 1,850 out of school suspensions for those 1,137 students. And some of these students have more than 5 suspensions. So we understand the backdrop of all this is around the behavior of students that we're seeing in some places. There are some schools that have not had much of any suspensions at all. And there are some schools that have very high suspension rates. So as Dr. Jordan talked about our task force, we have to look at how we can help our students to be more regulated in the schools, in their classroom, and how we can work with families to help our students, because if they are not, it's going to impact their learning in the long run. And we have a job to do. Our teachers, probably many are really burnt out because it's hard to teach when students are disruptive. It's hard to teach when students are cursing at you. And we've seen that in some of the places, not right across New Haven public schools, but in some of the places we've heard of stories of these things happening. And so those are some things as we plan for next year. We have to look at how we can also enhance our social emotional programs with students and the staff, how we can look at how we can help students to be more, to access their learning, to be there for their learning, and working with the Michigan model and all these different programs we have to help kids to be more regulated. We also have those of the extreme nature that are mental health issues that we are working with other services to work on. So this is our school in a nutshell. We love them all. There's a lot of work to be done. We are cognizant of the work to be done, and the schools, the teachers, the students, the families need all of our support. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Did you also have the first reading of the philosophy statement? Seriously,
Is that for me? Who has that?
It's under superintendent's report.
I
That
think
was
It would have been governance. It would have been.
that should have been governance.
Oh, it went in the
President
wrong
Rivera.
place because I'm saying.
Yeah,
okay.
that should be governance, and actually it's a first reading of that. So I don't know whether or not if that would actually govern as a an action item.
No, it's not an action
No.
item.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Yarborough, you had your virtual hand up earlier. Are you?
Yes, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you. For the presentation and the slides, it was wonderful. It's wonderful to hear about the students' accomplishments, the teacher recognition and accomplishments. The slides may already be public, but if there's an opportunity to make them public in addition to the board receiving them, I would love for the students and families and staff to see their names somewhere publicly and be able to share that on social media, et cetera. But thank you very much for your team, your work, and all that's done. Yes, so I'm just very grateful for the recognition and celebration. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. I'd be happy to share those. And I'll tweet them as well.
Yes, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. For President's report, I'll be very brief. I just want to congratulate our new student board member who was recently elected, Mr. Dave Cruz Bustamante. He is a sophomore at Wilbur Cross, and I guess he'll be joining us at our first July meeting. Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox.
This will be brief because we haven't met yet. We will be meeting this coming Thursday. So no report.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Citywide School Building Committee report.
So we were supposed to meet last Thursday. We had to cancel the meeting because it hadn't, the agenda wasn't posted. We had some wires crossed somewhere along the way, but we will be scheduling a special meeting sometime in the next week or two.
Okay, thank you. And finance and operations.
Because we had 101 or so action items plus the budget for next year, we had no discussion items, and so no further report than what you've already heard.
Thank you. governance report, Dr. Benitez is not in. Will Ms. Jackson be giving the
Sure.
report? Okay.
Yep,
thank you.
sure. So just as mentioned previously, we have for the first reading the Series 6000, which is the philosophy statement for Series 6000. The other thing that we have included in the board is just another reminder of the required and recommended policies. Again, we're trying to encourage committees to really start working on some of those policies there. You know, although we have a manual that will have the updated policies in all the areas, we definitely want to make sure that we're given an opportunity to make some of those policies fit for New Haven Public Schools. So again, that's just giving you another outline of what policies are there, enough to provide some inspiration, if you will. The other document that we do have that we provided is a draft copy of a transgender nonconforming youth document that we made as a supplemental guidance document to the transgender nonconforming youth policy that was passed some time ago by this board. So we have that also that we've worked on, and we wanted to make sure that the board has had the opportunity to see that document as well. Again, really the purpose of it is really to help with the implementation of that policy that was passed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jackson. Any questions or comments? Mr. Wilcox?
Thank you. Just a quick one on that last item for these management guidelines. I think this is great that it's coming together. In addition to a variety of school staff and principals and central office administrators, we've also had some parent involvement, teacher involvement, particularly with David Weinreb and Aaron Michaud, but also some parents and the LGBTQ plus youth task force members have also taken a look at this. And we will be looking at some of these items in future F&O things, because F&O agendas, because they do deal with building leaders coming forward with upgrades or needs in order to match the policy that this board passed a couple months ago. So I just want to thank everybody for pulling in on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to food service task group. Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, thank you. Our group met last week. We met and want to just highlight two things from our agenda. One, the food gap subgroup team that works to make sure our students have food. I just really appreciate their work, not just during the school year, but also during breaks, also during the summers. The school system has a summer meals program, and more than 70 sites have signed up or still signing up in order to receive meals several times a day so that our students can receive food and just participate in that. So I'm very grateful for all the workers and partnerships inside the city and elsewhere who are involved in that. And also on the topic of sustainability and environmental consciousness related to food service, we were able to have a visit and a presentation by the city's food system policy division that manages the equitable food-oriented development portfolio. And specifically, we spoke about values-based institutional food procurement to look at what the city can do as the Board of Education in our food purchases and what we provide and how we communicate about nutrition and the economic benefits and also the sustainability benefits. So we look forward to having an ongoing conversation and also coming down to actionable steps in terms of how we source food and also how we help to make it available to our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Any questions or comments for Dr. Yarborough? Okay, seeing none, I will move that we go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 12006A regarding discussion concerning the evaluation of public officer or employee, Dr. Eileen Tracy, superintendent. And I will invite for part of the executive session, Dr. Tracy, and then Attorney Alexiadis for the entire session. Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
yes.
Mr. Golson,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
and Dr. Benitez is still not in, Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I will yes as well. And the link was emailed to you all, pretty sure. So we'll see you in executive session. Thank you. Dr. White, can you stop sharing your slide so I can see everybody? Thank you.
All right. All right.
Let's see. I think we lost a few in the transition. Okay, give them a minute, maybe they decided to be done. Oh, that's it.
I'm sorry, I hit the link for the executive meeting again and was sitting there waiting for you to let me in.
That's okay. Dr. Joyner had to leave, so he's not going to be back into this meeting. We are out of the executive session and back in regular session. There were no votes in executive session, no decisions made. And so there's nothing else to discuss. Dr. Mr. Wilcox, question, comment?
Move we adjourn.
I was just going to say that.
He beat me this time. Nice move.
Sounds good. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough.
Was there a second?
Yes,
Yes.
I figured it.
Okay, I didn't.
Yes.
Dr. Joyner is not here. Students are not here. Mr. Bolton
Yes.
and Eliker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Good night,
Good-
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody. Good